11 years ago, I couldn't speak. Not just in public, at home too. Not even to my own parents. It's not like I didn't have anything to say. I did. I just didn't know how to say it. Now I'm here, 15 years old, skipping school, and standing on the TEDx stage. That's, thank you. That's a sort of ripple that I never thought I'd ever be able to create. Here's why. First of all, I grew up in a multilingual household. That may sound a little bit impressive, but honestly, it felt a lot more like an overlapping Venn diagram. My mom speaks Vietnamese, my dad speaks Cantonese and Mandarin, and I was enrolled into a French immersion school from the time I could hold a pencil. You can imagine how that all went. A lot of these languages overlapped, the grammars changed, the tones, I'm scared even thinking of that. I didn't know what to say. And I would remember at family dinners, my aunties and uncles would switch from English to Cantonese, Cantonese to Vietnamese, Vietnamese to English, or maybe not, I can't tell. It was impossible to keep up with, so I stopped trying to reply. At 4 years old, I was an expert in silence. Not just introverted, not just shy, but silent. A lot of adults would just say, oh yeah, she's just like trying to stay in her little space. Others would say it's delayed speech. Eventually, we had a name for it. Selective mutism. Selective mutism means that I would be silent in certain situations. This could be something like introducing myself to an adult, or just even talking to my parents. This impacted my life deeply, and I didn't know what to say. So, instead of using my words, I relied on nods and my hands moving around. That's pretty impossible to understand, but my sister somehow was able to decode it. It's not because we were soul-connected, mind-reading siblings or anything like that, but I think with enough eyebrows wiggled, she got what I was trying to say. If I pointed at this food, she would say, that one looks nice. I think Leah wants to eat that one. I don't know how she did it, even to this day. And even my parents, fluent in over 3 languages, patient, couldn't understand what I was trying to say. And that's how far removed my voice felt. I wasn't speaking a second language or a third language. I was speaking no language. You can picture dim sum Sundays. This is a staple in Cantonese culture. Imagine these big rolling metal carts filled with delicious foods inside. Imagine loud conversations on the table adjacent, or clinking teacups. I always look at the teacups and wonder, why did they always look extra small when I was extra thirsty? At the end of the meal, someone has to go up to the front counter and ask for the bill. Simple task, right? But when you can't speak, it's difficult. And my parents would turn to both me and my sister and ask, can one of you go ask? My brain hit a wall. My palms would start to sweat, my stomach turning, and my brain, which ran at usually thousands of miles per hour, stopped. I would slowly walk up to the counter, looking behind my shoulder at my sister over and over until she would come up and do it for me instead. In moments like those, I felt 2 things. 1, I felt relief. I didn't have to go up and ask for the bill. But secondly, I felt shame. Not because anyone laughed at me when I came back or that I completely made a fool of myself, but because I wanted to say something. I wanted to ask for the bill. I wanted to use my voice, but I just couldn't. My body wouldn't allow me to just ask for the bill. When you can't speak, moments like these impact your lives, and it stops you from doing the things that you want to do. When I was 7 years old, I had a speech pathologist. She tried to help me, but it didn't do much since not every second grader wants to hear how much I love dogs. I had a stutter. You can't go from silent to speaking without some sort of issue. I couldn't communicate. I tried to tell jokes, but I knew it wouldn't land because there'd always be another student who could speak faster, smoother, better. And they'd get the applaud. They'd get the laugh. I became the background in every group conversation. One day, while I was talking to my speech pathologist, she told me, everyone speaks like waves. Some waves are big and crash. Others are still small and rising. But everyone's wave is different. And that was the point. We all have our own unique wave. But all that support disappeared by middle school. Schools often assume that by 6th grade, you're ready for the world. They don't need any more speech help. But I wasn't ready. I still needed the help. So I tried to compensate. I would practice presentations in my bedroom until midnight. I would carry a fidget toy in my hand so I wouldn't get scared and start shaking during speeches. I even downloaded a word of the day app so I can sound just a little bit smarter. One word was defenestration, the act of throwing someone out a window. I'm still waiting for a natural moment to use that one right now. Then came high school. September 2023. I was terrified. There were bigger classrooms, and people would actually be studying. Everyone had iPhones, and I would be standing shoulder to shoulder with people with driver licenses. You may have expected me to maybe linger in the library, read books, or maybe hang out in the band room with a few friends. But no. I joined the school debate club. I know this is shocking for a lot of people, especially for my parents. They thought I was insane for this, but my logic was this. I see people who do debate. Sure, maybe a little bit annoying, but they're able to express their words. They're able to speak fluently and able to have conversations with anyone about anything. I was inspired by this. I thought that maybe debate could be my gateway to this, that I'll be able to speak perfectly once I enter debate. But my first speech, total mess. I was stuttering, I was fumbling on my words, and I was holding onto my paper like it was a lifeline. But when I finished my speech, I looked up from my paper. I looked up at the audience and the judges, who were technically judging me, but they weren't actually judging me. They were listening. They were writing down what I was saying. They were nodding and they were agreeing. For the first time, people were listening to what I had to say because I had a platform now where I could be heard, where no one was laughing at me or ridiculing me for what I was saying, where no one was speaking over me or finishing my sentences. Now, I could finally be heard. So I continued with debate, and I ended up qualifying for provincials and nationals. But at one of my larger competitions, I bombed a lot of the rounds, like fully wiped out. And I remember on our final round, me and my partner were discussing our predictions of if we won round one or if we lost it, or I think this point in round two was kind of weird. And we ended up spending our entire preparation time discussing on our predictions, that when I went on the podium for my speech on my final round, my paper was blank. This is different from every other round I've had where I'd always write down every single word for word, punctuation to punctuation, so everything could be perfect. But this time, my paper was blank. I had to improv it. I wasn't perfect, and I needed to be perfect. I'd always memorized everything, but now this was my raw self. But that speech was delivered smoothly, authentically, and naturally, because I wasn't focused on how many applause I can get, on how many nods the judges give me, but I was focused on how authentic I was. After this round, I didn't just feel proud. I felt changed. I reflected back on middle school and how long I'd been carrying on to that silence. Middle school's awkward for everyone, but for me, it was 3 years of feeling invisible. 3 years of not knowing what to say and when to say it. I was a student who never raised her hand in class, the student who would stutter at every word and not be able to integrate defenestration into my vocabulary. And the worst part was, I didn't have anyone to support me without my speech pathologist. I had nothing. And so I thought, this can't just be my story. There must be more students out there, more kids who also had struggles with their own self and how to show themselves, how to speak to others. So I reached out to people and looked for ways to try to help others to create the change that I want to see. And I found a nonprofit, the Youth Debate League. I currently represent one of their 22 international branches across the world to try to teach kids about public speaking and how to not care too much about perfection, but rather how to show your voice and share it with others. And by helping students step into their own voices, I realized something. This isn't just my own story. This is something a lot of us are still figuring out, especially those of us who've grown up with more than one language or more than one version of ourselves. And I might not be the perfect person to say this. I'm not a qualified expert. I'm not a certified coach. But I do know how it feels to be in a room and not know what to say. 11 years ago, I couldn't speak. Now I speak because I know my voice is a wave, and waves make ripples. Those ripple reaches people. Maybe it's you. Maybe it's someone who's still waiting to speak. But no matter what it is, your voice is important because it's yours. There's nothing wrong with the way you speak. There is something powerful in the way you think. And your voice, like a wave, will come in time. So until then, let's all use our own waves to create ripples with each other.